Yeah, I was like, do I need to write one tonight? Hi, this is Miss Litton, and this is AP Biology Review of the Lymphatic and Immune System. Say hi. Hi. Right on. Okay, so the very first part was more along the evolution of an immune system. We have already discussed in a hyperdoc the plant's immune system, right? What they do to the plant defensive mechanisms. We've already talked about that. But we learned about slime molds and how they have sentinels that when they are multicellular and they're all working together as a team, those are kind of like our macrophages. Now that we know about macrophages, we looked at fruit flies. We looked at, now that you know about T cell receptors and B cell receptors, do you see how pattern recognition receptors are just precursors to that, right? And we know about specificity, right? Just like we have millions of virgin Bs and millions of virgin Ts in order to identify all the possible pathogens that we're going to be exposed to in our lifetime. And then I gave you examples of different types of receptors. We looked at how the pathway is in reality versus the simple diagram here. And then we also talked about different kinds of things that you might identify, like flagella. Could tell you, hey, we don't have that kind of flagella, so that would be a tripwire to trigger, hey, this is something that's foreign. We looked at examples of that. Then we moved into our immune system. Key thing to our immune system is to know it's totally integrated with what other system? Circulatory system. And what looks like a negative in the circulatory system, and that negative is that there is more hydrostatic pressure at the arterial end of the capillary bed than there is osmotic pressure on the venule end of the capillary bed. You might go, oh no, we're pushing out more fluid than we're recovering. That's really not so bad, because now we have a system adapted to scoop up that excess fluid, send it through some what? Lymph nodes. And those lymph nodes are great checkpoints in order to see if there's any pathogens in there. Question? Did I see a hand up? Was it like this, my peripheral vision? Okay, I don't know. Okay, so that our B and our T cells can hang out there, so can our police force, right? In order to look for things that are invading our body. But our immune system is not just about producing lymphocytes and absorbing excess tissue fluid, okay? But this is the one that most people forget in the microvilli of our small intestines. We have lymph vessels, lacteals that absorb fat for us, okay? We then talked about how extensive our lymphatic system is. We talked about how the lymphatic system works very similar to the way our veins work, and what's the key thing there? Muscle can compress, but I'm looking for one other key. Valves, yeah. One-way flow. I'll skip over the edema pictures, though I know you love them. We then went and talked about primary and secondary organs of your lymphatic system. We talked about little eviscerated girl, and we talked about the bone marrow being important. The bone marrow is important to, besides our lymphatic system, what is it important to? Tell me out loud. Circulatory system, all the components of blood, right? Platelets, red blood cells, as well as white blood cells, and your lymphatic. So B cells are born in, and T cells are born in the bone marrow, but B cells what? Mature in the bone marrow, whereas T cells mature in the thymus. Those are your primary organs, right? Then there are other organs, secondary organs. We talked about lymph nodes, and they're all about filtering what? Lymph. Good? Yeah. And then the spleen is about filtering your blood. And then we said there's other places too. Oh, and there was your spleen, there's your lymph node. We talked about tonsils. We talked about part of your digestive system has areas that you have lymph tissue, reticular tissue that will help in that filtering process. Okay, that's our setup. Okay, then we think, okay, think outside to in. First thing you want to do in your immune system is prevent things from getting what? In. So let's just think without even looking at the presentation. What are things that keep things at a distance? They can't get in my body. What are some resources I have? I have skin, primary skin, right? What other resources do I have to keep things out of my body? Yes. Hair. I have hairs. All other places, hairs. Yes. What else? What? waxes, oils, antimicrobial agents of my saliva, low pH of my stomach, right? All those kinds of things are barriers to keep things out of your body. Okay? Now, let's say something gets through those barriers. How do I know what is self versus non-self? What would be the one word you would tell me there? Antigen, right? My own cells should not stimulate an immune response in me, right? That my own cells are good with me. But if they're put in somebody else, then they become antigens, right? These are my surface markers. So these proteins, these carbohydrates, these things that are on the surfaces of cells, these appendages, these are what your body comes in contact with, your cells, your police force as well as your special forces, and goes, wait, it does not belong to me. And those things are called antigens. And that starts your immune response. That first response is done, how ironic. That first response is done by your police force. This is what you have a lot of, right? Let's just call it rhinovirus A. I don't know what all the ones are. Flu, something, right? Comes in your body. All of these can recognize that it's bad. All of them, right? But one B cell and one T cell recognize that it's bad. Do you see the difference? So my police force is they're right away, they're getting involved in this. Of all of these, the neutrophils are the ones you have the most of. Neutrophils neutralize, that's how I remember that. And it's a granulocyte because along with the eosinophils and basophils. Neutrophils get on the scene, they're eating, they're trying to destroy things, they're setting up alarms. Monocytes will come out, and monocytes are smaller at first, but then they get out and they get large macrophages, and they're eating and setting off alarms. So that's your general police force. You have more of them than anything else until the special forces have been triggered. Once they have been triggered, then I will have 1 million T cells that recognize that particular virus, and I'll have 1 million B cells that recognize that particular virus. And then it's going to be game over, because they're going to be able to wipe them out, both the free floaters and the ones that have invaded my body cells. Okay, but this is just the first start. Okay, and we talked about what each of these do. Eosinophils go after the big ticket items, a splinter in your body, something in your eye, a worm. Okay, basophils is in common with another cell up here. Who is a basophil in common with? A mast cell. They both secrete histamine. Mast cells will circulate your body tissues. Basophils will circulate in your blood. A macrophage is in common with some other cells up there. Who is a macrophage in common with? Dendritic cells, a neutrophil. They're all eaters. They're going to eat. Natural killer cells do it just differently, not by eating, but by creating like an apoptosis-like environment on that secondary cell, whatever it's attached to. Okay? Complement, same thing. Remember the hole drillers? That's just one aspect of it, right? But they also, you consider all the proteins that help, like cytokines, interleukins, and interferons, right? Interleukins are like, go team, go team, go. Interferons, I always think of interferons as trying to interfere with their ability to get in my cell. You know, lock your windows and doors. It's a warning one cell gives to another cell. So all of these contribute. These will finish the job. When these start, that's called the inflammatory response. Now you can have an inflammatory response because you got a cut and it got what? Infected. So that's a major inflammation. You have pus oozing out or something like that. I know somebody who got their appendix out and it got infected. They didn't keep it clean, so then it like swelled up and they pushed it on, like explode. It's really gross and stinky. Now, that is an inflammatory response. But you can have very small inflammatory response. You can turn your ankle and get, right? What is it called? What do you call that when you sprain your ankle, twist your ankle? You're destroying, that's soft tissue damage, which oftentimes is worse to heal than a bone, right? A bone you can set, soft tissue damage takes a long time. There's an inflammatory response there. So when you hurt yourself, you're working out, those are little inflammatory responses. That's why people take those, is to kind of calm it down afterwards. That's why they ice their bodies, because by icing you get your blood vessels to constrict, right? Because it's going to get worse when they're dilated. And that whole inflammatory response, we went through here, we looked at the players. I've already talked to you about the players. You might review them, the 3 granulocytes, the macrophages, and the dendritic cells. I'm just pulling it out because they're not pulled out in my presentation. That way, if you had to freeze the video, then you could capture that information. You have pictures here, you have pictures here in your book, all talking about the inflammatory response and the steps that take place during that. Let's not forget what we've learned about our circulatory system with the platelets, right? The platelets coming in to clot the blood. Mast cells are secreting histamine. What does that look like? It looks like this. What are all the benefits of histamine? We can see the overreaction, but what is a benefit of histamine? I can see an essay question. People are allergic to peanut butter. That is a result of histamine, and going into anaphylactic shock. Why would ever something like histamine have evolved? Why has that adaptation persisted and not been eliminated? Yes, that one?
It allows the immune cells to exit the tissue.
Exactly. It makes it easier for your immune system cells to get between the endothelium and exit and get out to wherever the danger is going on. What is something else? Allows more fluid to get out there, increases the temperature, possibly killing the bacteria. It alerts your body that you have a problem because that excess fluid is going to push on free nerve endings, and that's going to cause pain. It's a real problem with diabetics when they get, I don't know what it's called, nephritic or necrosis or something, and their cells die due to damage by the high increase of sugar. And then as a result of that, they cannot feel pain, and when they cut themselves, and they end up causing a lot of damage and getting a lot of infection because they're unaware that they have damage to their tissue. So pain is there as an alarm to you to let you know you have a problem. So pain is a part of that. Okay, so all of those things are good reasons to have histamine. Macrophage here is eating slower to the scene than the neutrophils. He's releasing those cytokines that alarm, that interleukin. All right. Any question on infections or anything about that? We talked about other complement system. We talked about interleukin, interferon. We talked about, remember that was a super fun video, CD4, the CD8 classic CD9 2AB3 complex of drilling holes. And we talked about natural killer cells and how they work. All of that has to do with Lady Gaga. What you're born with, right? Now, let's talk about your adapted or your acquired immunity. And I have questions, and I'll just do them all at the end, okay? Your acquired immunity, your specific immune response, that's a good diagram, and I think I put it in your notes. Your specific immune response breaks down to these two, right? Your B cells are going to take care of your free-floating viruses and bacteria. How? The B cells respond to free-floating viruses and bacteria because they have B cell what? Receptors, which triggers a virgin B cell. But that virgin B cell will not start doing business until it's been conferred on by a what? Helper T cell who says, yes, I agree, we have a problem. Okay? Then that virgin B cell will grow and divide and make how many different types of cells? 2. Okay? What are the 2 cells that will make? Plasma and membrane. Plasma cells, of which you will have millions of, a clone army of those B cells, will release what? Antibodies. Those antibodies are specific for the pathogen that stimulated it, right? Very, very specific. And those antibodies will mark those pathogens for destruction. These are not going to be the same antibodies that mark this virus and these bacteria. It would be 2 different antibodies. Do you agree with that? I just threw 2 examples on there. Memory cells are for what? For the future, right? Because when this has been overcome, all of those plasma cells are going to do what? Apoptosis. We can't support all those plasma cells. Can't support them in our body. We would be out of homeostasis. But we can keep a few memory cells around, And it takes much less to stimulate them on that second go around, and they make even more antibodies, so they're even more effective the second time around. T cells are different. They're not taking care of the free-floating viruses and bacteria. They're taking care of what? They're taking care of their own, right? They're taking care of their own. Our own body cells that have been compromised by that virus or bacterium and are displaying that as this is inside of me, I'm sorry, just kill me now. That's what T cells are going to do. So remember, each T cell, it doesn't matter if this cell's infected, this cell's infected, and this cell's infected. As a T cell, I can only kill one specific type of infection, right? And I have T cell receptors. And remember, those T cell receptors, I'm just throwing these up, remember? Okay, those T cell receptors are specific. In this case right here, now we know more to the story. Look over here. Now we know more to the story, right? Because that helper T cell, that dendritic cell, when he displays that antigen inappropriately in this diagram, what is he displaying it on? MHC2, because I will help you. The T cell is stabilizing that binding using a what? CD4. A CD4. I am for you, not against you. Right? Do you remember that part? So there's more to that story. That's an oversimplification, right? So we know. Oh, that's displaying on an MHC2, and the T cell is stabilizing it with a CD4 protein, and now it knows, yes, okay, I am the one who can recognize that particular pathogen. I will tell the B cell, he'll start making his plasma cells and his memory cells, and we'll take care of it. We talked about antibodies. They have long chains, they have short chains, right? 2 long chains, 2 short chains. The ends of the long shorts, the B cell receptor, are you with me? Because there's a difference between a B cell receptor and an antibody, right? B cell receptor is on the B cell or on the plasma cell, but your original virgin B cell, he's going to make plasma cells that make antibodies that have that same recognition for that same pattern, right? And all of those receptors, both B and T cell receptors, were coded for by how many genes? 3 genes through the process of exon recombination, okay? Which is a part of what kind of control? Post-transcriptional control mechanism, right? From all of that, variations on the post-transcriptional control, you have all your millions of varieties of Bs and T cells. The ends of these are what tell you what's going to happen. Is a macrophage going to come along and eat you? Is it going to cause clumping? And we talked about how there were different kinds of immunoglobulins or opsonins, and you don't have to memorize those. IgG is your general one, and then IgE, you need to know that one because that's the one that buries itself in the mast cell. No. That's the one that buries itself in the mast cell. So now I have this drawing, but now you know it's IgE, eat you, okay? And the mast cell will not start secreting histamine unless that antibody's in there and an antigen is stuck to that antibody before it starts secreting its histamine. And so that's why if you have, let's say you're allergic to pollen and there was a bloom, right? And then you're better. You still have some of those antibodies, right, in you. So as soon as that same pollen is there, like say in the morning, you walk by that same plant or whatever, the antibodies are still there, they connect with the antigen, they embed in the mast cells, and boom, you have histamine again. And you have that repetitive allergic reaction that some of you have. All right, now let's talk T cells. I already talked to you about MHC1s, MHC2. Look to your neighbor and say, do you get MHC1s, MHC2s? Why is that a good evolutionary development?
MHC2 is like a cell that's already killed the
What does that tell you? What does it tell? A B cell doesn't care about MHC1s and MHC2s. So by the way, B cells have MHC2s. Okay? But what does that tell you? Who to kill and who to help. right? You display an antigen on MHC1, you're done. I know I gotta kill you. You display an MHC2, I will help you. Okay, that's critical. Who to help and who to kill. We want to know that stuff in our body, right? When we forget that stuff in our body, it's called an autoimmune disease, right? Can autoimmune diseases kill people? Absolutely, with their compromised immune system. Absolutely, MS can kill somebody, where you attack your own myelin sheath on your neuron. So that's a big deal. So we talked about you're safe, you're out. We had pictures where we looked at the big deal here. Remember, we talked about natural killer cells and how they didn't finish out their schooling and they ended up dropping out, and they're good killers. This was a summary. I'm just putting it up here in case somebody who's watching the video and they want to take a screenshot of that. We had that summary. These were good application level, right, on why it triggers and why it doesn't. Anything on here you ought to be able to talk about, no problem. Should feel super comfortable. Name something in the blood. Let me talk to you about it. This is another one that is a good thing, a good summary of everything in the circulatory system and immune system. Here is a Venn diagram, and there's a picture in your book that also goes through it that you might want to look. Okay, last but not least was talking about innate and acquired immunity. This is what we would call our adaptive immunity, right? Could be, if it is active. So what we're born with, innate, please, active immunity means I've been exposed to the pathogen, I have developed a clone army, and I have what kind of cells? Memory cells. So I own this immune response. If I get this in the future, I will be able to defend myself against it. That is active immunity. How could that happen? Well, I was either exposed to the real deal antigen and I got sick, or I don't want to get sick, so they gave me a fake antigen in a shot, but it's enough to trigger that immune response, so now I'm sick. This type of immunity is not long-lasting. This is temporary immunity. You are borrowing somebody else's antibodies for the short term. If you borrow them and don't have a chance to develop your own immune to it, then it's not going to help you, right? But sometimes we can't afford to do that. I don't want to die due to the snake bite. Can you please give me some immunity right now so I can live, right? So there are certain reasons why you would do that. And then this is just a good way to protect children as they're developing so they don't get sick. So you borrow the immunity from your mother. Okay, so there was that. Then we talked again about cytokines, which ones are on the offense or the defense. We talked about some of the strategies they're doing, hybridizing a cancer cell with a specific plasma cell so you could make antibodies. Those antibodies could be used for detection of a sickness, detection of a cancer, to bring a chemo drug to a particular cancer cells. We talked about when things don't work out for us, like allergies, could be just an inconvenience or it could be toxic. We talked about T cells in relationship to things like poison ivy and cheap jewelry. We talked about blood and how you can give blood to anyone who won't attack it. Hopefully this makes sense now. I probably talked about this when we learned about genotypes with blood, is I said to you, you can actually give blood to anybody once, right? Does it make sense to you now?
Yes.
You shouldn't do that because you don't know the next time you're going to get blood, you might get bad blood, right? You end up killing yourself as a result of that, right? Because you'll develop that's bad. But if you had to, on a desert island, you don't have any blood, you know, somebody's dying, go ahead. It won't make any difference the first time because those cells are going to die anyway before you even get a chance to start and attack them. And by the time you build up, you know, your memory cells and all of that. But the next time, that would be really bad for you. And that's what basically happens when we talked about mothers who the antibodies can cross the placenta, but the blood doesn't. So your first child is fine if it has different blood from you. First child, no problem, right? But in the birthing process, some of that blood's going to mingle. You're going to get a taste of your baby's blood that's different, and you're going to start to develop your immune response to it and all your antibodies and your memory cells. So your next pregnancy, if it's that same blood type, you'll already have the antibodies to cross that placenta. And then when that happens, it can cause the blood to clot right there in the baby, and then that ends up killing the baby. We talked about other autoimmune diseases where you attack your joints or your kidneys or your heart, and that is all lupus. Most people who experience lupus just experience in their joints, but people who get it really bad, their kidneys and their heart are attacked. In multiple sclerosis, you're attacking the very linings and the insulation of all your neurons, so that's really bad. All right, let's go through and do the practice problems if you would like. As soon as you see one, tell me, and I will stop it. Here, why don't you log in as how many hours of homework you have tonight? It's always a fun one. Give me the have tos, not the want tos. Like, I have to do this tonight. Not like, I would prefer to get it done, but the have tos. That's what I want you to log in. And I'm going to pause you for just a minute. No, it's... Okay, so let's check your answers. All of those are lymphoid organs. All of them. I'm curious, how do you pick the lymph and not pick the spleen and the... I don't know. Returns excess tissue fluid to the blood. I believe I led with that. Okay. Yay, all of those are correct. All right, let's try another one. I believe this is the one where there's a picture, but you don't need the picture. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's see. Yay, immature in the thymus. B cells. Okay, somebody selected T cells. Do T cells have anything to do with antibodies? No. Why are you picking that? Somebody said monocytes. Do monocytes do anything with antibodies? No. What are monocytes? They become macrophages. They get out and then they become really large macrophages out in the tissue. Yay! If it's killing it, it must be on an MHC1 because you are done. All right, let's try some more.
The two question ones is logging in twice during my quiz.
What?
The two unanswered is me again. Sorry.
Oh. All right, let's check it out. A and B. If you have a vaccine, you have long-lasting immunity, and it's active, right? Okay, so if you're AB, you can accept A blood, B blood, AB blood, and O. Yay! The end. Review. You're smart. Yay. That's it. Say goodbye. Bye. Have a piece of toast if you're hungry.